This is Straight Up Talk with Sharon and Peter. We are both proud Brits and Canadians. This is a no-nonsense weekly podcast about people, life, leadership, and all sorts of stuff. We don't always agree. Hello, I'm Sharon Jones, business owner of Be a Better You, developing better managers and leaders, and this is...
Hi, I'm Pete Johnson, owner of Moveman Traders. Buy and sell anything.
Thank you very much there, Peter. Topic for this week is a special request from Jessie, a fellow member of the Grand River CrossFit community. And in fact, it is the Grand River CrossFit community where we got inspired to do the podcasts from the one that is done by Nairi, Greg and Fiona. And they inspired us to do this. Anyway, Jesse wants to know, he asked us this question, because we were both born in England, he wants to know, how did you, Peter, get into football, soccer, plus why do you like the Buffalo Bills? And for me, how did I get into horse riding and jumping? Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse asked me, because I always wear my Bills shirt to gym, well, most of the time anyway. He asked me why I like the Bills so much and how comes I got into the NFL. So, I mean, when I was living in San Francisco in the 80s, we used to go and watch the 49ers, because they was a local team. You know, and you could hardly ever get a ticket, but I think we went once or twice, and then we'd watch them on TV. So that's how I got my love for the NFL. And now that we've moved to Dunville, the local team is the Buffalo Bills. So right. I'm a Bills fan now.
But how did you get into football in the first place?
Well, football is a much longer story. Do you want me to say that now?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
No telling tomorrow.
Well, when I was a kid, 7 years old, we moved house and I started a new school. Didn't have any friends. And my sister used to take me to school, Jacqueline, if you're listening, thank you. And because I didn't have any friends, she'd say to me at playtime, I won't go off and play with anyone. I'll sit on the wall with you. So we used to sit on the wall and watch all the other kids play football. Anyway, I ended up getting sat next to this guy and he said to me, "You like football, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, why don't you come down the park after school? We often go down and have a game of football." So I said, "Yeah, okay then, great." And I told my sister and she's like, "Oh, great, Pete, you've made some friends." So I took myself down the park and watching these kids play football, and I recognised, I call him by his real name because he sadly died a few weeks ago, Mike.
Right, yes.
And Mike saw me and he said, "Oh, come over, join us." And then to his horror, I didn't have anything on that represented Crystal Palace, which was the local football team. So he said, "Oh, sorry, you can't play." So I'm like, "Oh, wow."
When you said anything on, just describe what you mean by that.
Kit. Any of the kit.
Meaning?
Like the colours of Crystal Palace.
When you said anything on, I thought you turned up nude.
Oh, no. Like the kit, the football kit, like the top, the shorts.
Okay.
And anyway, so I went home and I told my mum, I said, how'd you get on at the park? I said, "Well, they wouldn't let me play because I didn't have anything with Crystal Palace written on it." I said, "They want me to go and buy a shirt." So off we went to the local sports store to get a Crystal Palace shirt. And we walked in there and looked at all the shirts, Chelsea, Tottenham, and there was one Crystal Palace shirt there. It was £12. And my mum was like, "I'm not paying £12 for a football shirt. Can't I get you something else with Crystal Palace written on it?" Well, in them days, the socks had Crystal Palace written on them. And she said to the bloke in the shop, "How much are the socks?" He said, "Oh, they're only £2. She said, "I'll have the socks then." So off I put my socks on. Next day I went down the park, ran up to the boys where they were playing football, and he's like, "Where's your shirt? Where's your Crystal Palace shirt?" I said, "Well, my mum couldn't afford a shirt, but I've got the socks." He said, "Oh, great, okay, in you come." And that was it. I became a Crystal Palace fan after
that. That's pretty funny. So
yeah.
I looked at the neuroscience of childhood passions. They aren't always pure preference. They're often socially shaped choices that feel safe, rewarded, and identity building at the time, which is what you've just described.
Yes, right, yeah.
So for me, getting into horses, I don't really remember a time when I wasn't into them. I remember every Christmas and birthday on the top of my list, I would write a pony. And we lived in Bramhall in England at the time. We had a garage. And one Christmas morning, I woke up and I could swear that there was a sounds of a pony in the garage. I was so excited and I ran out. No pony. At junior school, I used to have a little friend called John. He had no kneecaps. I don't know why I remember that, but he didn't.
He had no kneecaps?
He had no kneecaps, no.
How did he run?
Very weirdly. So, but the school, Chiltern Park Junior School, this was, had a mascot and it was a donkey. And the donkey was called Willie. And they wanted people to look after Willie the donkey. So, because I could only afford to go riding once a week at this little stables. It was 50p an hour. That's how long ago it was. And they'd stick you on a horse and they'd lead you around. And, that wasn't very exciting for me. So the opportunity to look after Willie the donkey. And then I remember getting on Willie, and donkeys are notoriously difficult. Willie ran off with me on his back and he ran over the Crown Green bowling area.
Oh dear.
I know. So that in England. So we know bowling over here. In England, Crown Green bowling is on a pristine bit of grass.
Oh, yeah.
And the people who do it are like golfers, very fanatical about the grass.
Yeah.
So Willie ran off
very precious over their greens.
Very precious. So Willie ran over the Crown Green bowling area. So there's little hoof prints and then there's a splat mark where he bucked me off. But it didn't put me off. When I was a kid riding English, because I was in England, I learned how to jump just by doing it. And then at the age of 14, we moved, and then I lost the connection with horses, came to Canada, and about 2004, I went up to a ranch, and they were doing, obviously, Western riding. And I tried it and I really liked it. And I've been, as you know, been hooked on it ever since. And riding's something that it's passionate to me because it allows me to take myself outside of.
You have to have very deep pockets.
I don't have very deep pockets. Not that deep, not as deep as I used to. But yeah, horses are expensive, but we don't have kids.
They're expensive pets, yeah.
And you can sell a horse. You can't sell your children.
And you've done pretty well selling your horses, I must say.
I have.
Since I've been in Canada, I've been coming since 2012. I lived there from 2015 onwards. You've sold about 5 horses and you've made profit on 4 of them. Yeah,
and it's always a case of, because the thing is, you want to find a good sporting partner. Now, the difference between what I do and what you do, you're sitting there with your Crystal Palace hat on. So that's the sport you go and watch other people do. The sport that I do, I am working with another sentient being, a horse. So it's like playing a game on 2 separate minefields, theirs and your own. And I really enjoy the learning, but not just like people, not every horse is good at everything. So the reason I've sold horses in the past is because they haven't wanted to do the sport that I've wanted to do. I started out trail riding, which was great. Then I started teaching people to ride, which I absolutely loved doing. And that's how I got into training, actually. And then I started doing barrel racing, which for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically 3 barrels. I call it 15 seconds of glory. And I had a blast doing it. You can't go wrong going around 3 barrels. And I actually used to win money back then.
Wow.
I did, not very much, but enough to pay for my entry fees. But then I saw a reining video, Sharon, Florida. If any people here won't know what the heck I'm talking about, unless they know about reining. And I saw this reining video and it was like, wow, that looks so easy.
Yeah.
I know. And I've been humbled.
Everything done well looks easy.
Of course it does. I've been humbled every day since because it absolutely isn't.
Shall I tell you where my love of horses came from?
Yes.
Because I love horses too, as you know.
I do.
And I've only really got into riding since I've been in Canada. And, you say I'm a good rider, but I've got a natural
You're annoying because you've got a natural seat, but you don't actually want to learn it.
No, I'm just, I'd rather bet on them than ride them. And that's where my love of horses came, because when I was a kid, going back to Norbury as a kid, growing up in Norbury, we used to go to my nan's place quite a lot. And she always had horse racing on the TV, and she'd had a little bet, on the horses. And we used to sit there and watch all her horses run. Most of them would fall over or, come last. But just the fun and the thrill of it. And then obviously my mum worked in the bookies for a few years.
Right.
So as soon as I was old enough to go to the racetracks, I used to go on my own, and then started going with friends, and then I got into all the trainers and all the form and everything, and it just became a fascinating world to me.
I know when we were living back in the UK, we would go racing.
I used to go at least once a week.
Yeah.
When I had the business.
They're obviously beautiful animals, of course, that we both have an affinity for. But yeah, it was frustrating for me that you had such a nice seat, but you weren't really interested in learning how to do it. But I actually want to go back to your story of how you got into Crystal Palace, because before Crystal Palace, there was another team that your dad bought you a shirt for. Oh,
yeah. Oh, I was hoping you wasn't going to remember that. Yeah, one Christmas, my dad came home. I mean, my dad left when I was 8, so this is a very distant memory for me. But he came home with 2 football shirts. Manchester City had just won the FA Cup, which is like the big prize in England.
What does FA stand for?
Football Association Cup.
Right.
So they just won it. I think it was 1968, and so he must have gotten from knocked off somewhere, because he brought home 2 Manchester City tops, one for me and one for my brother Tony. And I saw them in the drawer, before Christmas. When you're a kid, you go sneaking around. I wonder what I got for Christmas. So I saw these 2 Manchester City tops. One's for me, one's for Tony. Anyway, but so I had a really big. My City was my first team, really. But then, of course, I met Mike, my dear old mate Mike.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't have played football with his crowd until I became a Crystal Palace fan. So
you had to forego City.
I had to leave City behind and start following Crystal Palace.
And actually, another interesting thing about this is you say that because in England, whichever football team you support when you're a kid, you're with them for life.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Whereas
can't change, yeah.
Over here, it's a little bit different, seemingly. Cause
me and Jessie were talking about that in the gym the other day, because Jessie was telling me about the LA Raiders and the Oakland A's and all this, and he said, "Oh, they're based in Vegas now, and they're based in so and so." And I was like,
Very different.
do they still have the same fan base, or?" And he's like, "No, I don't know, but I suppose the people in Vegas follow them now. You couldn't do that in England. If you left, if Crystal Palace left London and moved to Scotland, they wouldn't have any fans.
Because back then, teams were created based on local people.
Yeah.
And London's got 5 teams or something like that.
13.
13, right, there you go.
12 or 13.
Manchester, my hometown's got 2, Manchester United, Manchester City. Teams were initially obviously so that they could play against each other, but initially based on religion. Right, so there's the Catholic team and the Protestant team. So the history of it is quite interesting. Whereas over here, you tend to find people who support soccer teams in the UK, either from their parentage, or they just have maybe come across the name and liked it.
You like the name, yeah.
Anyway, we are at our 13 minutes. So brutally honest takeaway of the week about what we like. I don't really have a brutally honest takeaway, except to say I think the things that we tend to have a passion for when we're kids shape a lot of how we end up being as adults, and those preferences tend to stay with us. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would just say keep it simple and support your local football team.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, Peter. That was a very different podcast for this week. Thank you for listening. If you want more information, we don't have any more on this topic specifically, but that's quite all right. On anything else, you have an idea you'd like to share, go to the website beabetteryou.ca/podcast. And this week's podcast has been thoughtfully produced by Isla Sound. It's goodbye from me and it's good night from you, Peter.
Good night, everybody.